So there's a lot of concern out there about privacy issues and who really has the rights to the patient's data. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So for 23andMe, we always felt that 23andMe, one of the most important things we need to do is be able to guarantee, protect your privacy. So there's always limits to what any online company can guarantee. There's always risks with that. That said, we do everything we can to protect your privacy. And one of the most important things for us is defining privacy. What does privacy for you mean? It might be different than for me. So one of those important things is that we enable you to share your data if you want to. If you don't want to share your data or you don't want anyone to get access to this data, that's entirely your choice, and we need to enable that. If you do want to share your data with your physician, with your parents, with your siblings, we also need to enable that. So we always define privacy as giving you that opportunity of sharing how you want to. We do all kinds of things that we sort of akin to what they do in the banking world to protect the privacy and make sure that your data really is going to stay your data. And we've always had that argument that as much as I would love to know your genetic information, and I'm sure it's fascinating, I'd much rather have your bank account information. And so there's a lot of things I can learn from the banking world, because lots of people are comfortable with online banking. So lots of database security things that I can learn from how they manage that content and that information, and we've applied that to the genetics, to how we're actually managing a lot of this genetic data.
Right, and for research purposes, patients themselves can then opt to share their data with researchers?
So the way it is, when you sign up, you have the ability to opt into research or to opt out of the research. So 85+% of our customers have decided that they want to participate in research. And what that means essentially is that your genetic data in aggregate is going to be used for publications or potentially for various partners that we have that are looking to get research questions. Every so often we do get an opportunity where someone will say, I have a very specific question for people either with this genetic type or with this type of condition, and we go back and we recontact you and we say, do you want to participate in this kind of research? And overwhelmingly what we find is that people say, like, I want my genetic information to be used for the greater good. So overwhelmingly we're finding that people are interested in participating in research.
Right. I think they understand that this is a gold mine of information and that it can really help further, scientific advances. So another part of the conversation that we were talking about at the conference is whether patients can interpret their data accurately on their own. I took a class where we all got genotyped, and so I know what the results look like. But for someone who doesn't have any training in science, how difficult is it for them to interpret their own results?
So it's a great question, and it's actually one of the things that we felt as a company that we had the responsibility of starting to understand that from day one. So there's a number of independent academic studies that have been conducted that really are looking to see how are people understanding this data. And what's been amazing is overwhelmingly what they find is that people from all education backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds are able to get the information and make sense of it, and that the comprehension is much higher than even I would have expected. So we keep iterating. I mean, part of the beauty of also being a web-based system is that we iterate. So we do user testing, we bring people in, we show them the data, and we say, like, did you understand this? And we ask them questions to try to assess the comprehension. And when we find that we have errors, like, we iterate. So one of the things that we did very early on in the company is we had, we'd show you all the various disease risks and we'd have check boxes next to them. And customers immediately thought, like, that meant I have every single one of those diseases. So, like, within 48 hours, we were able to actually change that. And again, I think that's part of the thing that we always try to emphasize is that as a web-based company, we iterate. We get feedback from individuals and from physicians. Like, part of the reason why we're so interested in getting feedback is because we will iterate and we'll keep improving.
And so if an individual does test positive for, say, BRCA1 or 2, what are their next steps? Does 23andMe give them any sort of roadmap into how they should then take this data and go to their physician?
So I'd say 23andMe does three things with all of this data. It's like, one, we always say that you need to partner with your physicians, and that's part of the reason why, working with physicians and getting physicians up to speed on genetic information is so important, because you, the customer, are gonna get a report and you're gonna say, like, what do I do with this? Like, you can't go and do your own mastectomy. You need a physician. So there has to be a partnership with the physician. So number one is that go and talk to your physician about this. Number two is that we do actually have an independent group of genetic counselors. So we partner with a group called Informed, and you can call up. It's an additional fee, but they are trained on 23andMe, the genetic information, and they can help you think through, like, what does this information mean and what are some of the follow-ups that you should do. The last thing we do is that we intentionally have a community. So we have a number of people who have found out that they are carriers for BRCA1 and 2. And we've been doing some research on this now, like what is this, how does this look? Like, what do people do with this information? But the community is incredibly valuable, and especially for BRCA1 and 2, is what we find is that people want to understand, what are other people doing? Like, what do you do? What would I do? And then how do you deal with all the other potential consequences that come with that? So the community is really important.
I see. And what's in the future for 23andMe?
So I think the future for 23andMe is pretty awesomely exciting. I'm super excited. So we have over 150,000 people in the database now, and you can start to see the glimmer of what happens when you have millions and millions of people in the database. And I think the day is going to come when all researchers and pharma companies don't do research in the traditional way, where they have a hypothesis, they have to get a grant, do a study, but instead, like, it's just a real-time data query. Is caffeine protective for Parkinson's? There was a paper that just came out about caffeine and Alzheimer's being protective. So all this stuff starts to become data queries. And when you're a pharma company and you have a clinical trial, you need 1,000 people with metastatic breast cancer, that should just be a data query. Like, you don't need to go and put flyers up and try to recruit.
It takes forever.
It takes forever. Like, my goal in the next 5 years, like, make a clinical trial like a 30-day enrollment period. Like, just put out the information, get these people in right away. Like, that would have a massive impact on all of our healthcare. So part of the goal is, like, the more we can move these things faster and faster, the more we'll fail faster and we'll make discoveries faster. But everything, just like from the publications to research to getting questions, like, let's just make it all move faster. And I think that that's where consumers partnered with this entire healthcare system is going to be a fabulous partnership. So I think that will really, really change healthcare.
Yeah, so we're kind of at that brink of that.
Yes.
Total revolution.
We're at the total
brink.
Like, I was like, I can almost taste it. Like, I can see how big data is going to have. Big data and consumer empowerment can really make healthcare better for you and me.
Yeah, and as a medical student, I find that so fascinating. So.
Well, like, you're in the most interesting time, like, now with all this, like, molecular medicine actually coming and actually looking. Like, you might look at me and say, like, well, maybe I'm part Asian, maybe I'm part African. You have no, like, right now, like, the tools are just to sort of profile me. But, like, with a molecular medicine, you're going to be able to really know what is going on. Yeah. So I think it's going to be fascinating for you.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our viewers?
I think, part of my theme of the talk was really about owning your data, and again, it really had two messages. Like, one is that, like, the data is yours. Like, you own your medical record, you have rights to your drug history, like, all of this information, like, you own it. So you should ask for it. But then the second responsibility that comes with that is that if you actually own the data, you also need to be responsible for your health. And I think that that has to be a fundamental shift in all of our thinking about healthcare, is that you need to take responsibility for your actions. If you find out you are higher risk for type 2 diabetes, well then, like, you have a responsibility to not eat donuts every single morning. So we can't fix all the problems in healthcare if you are not going to play your part. And I think that's where there's a responsibility. We can give you that information, we can give you the tools, but you actually have to do something that's part of it. And I think that is a fundamental shift in this country that actually needs to start to happen.